Hi there. Welcome to A Creative Affair, a collection of conversations exploring creativity through the art of photography, art, music, writing, and so many other creative passions. I'm Len, a creative with a love of all things artistic, drawing, painting, photography, music, writing. I'm so blessed to be able to make a living out of teaching creativity in my own photography school here in Sydney, Australia. I went to art school at a very young age of 18. I went to learn to draw. Drawing was my absolute passion. I used to hide in my room drawing all day and all night. Unfortunately, my love for drawing trees and flowers and Mother Nature didn't really fit in with the paint on the floor art school. Either did my paintings. The way art teachers in the drawing department reacted to my work was incredibly deflating and emotional. At one point, I was even failing classes. It was absolutely terrible. Do you know, I gave up. I retreated. I took a year off and I followed my love of outdoor education, experiential and adventure education, and followed another dream. But I returned. And when I returned to finish my degree, I decided to major in my second love, which was photography. But this time around, there was something very different. Of course, I'd changed. But my teachers changed, and my teachers loved me photographing trees. And they helped me, and they gave me so much encouragement that I blossomed and blossomed. You see, the teachers, they shaped my experience at art school. And I graduated being the golden boy for photography in art school. And I had, Fujifilm was going to sponsor me. I had all sorts of sponsorship deals. And anyway, I downed cameras and walked away, but that's another whole story.
Goodness, Len. Len has lived an exciting life.
How did I fit it all in? I have no idea.
I don't know how you did either. Well, I'm Brie. I am a nature photographer living in Austin, Texas. I'm a life coach for creatives, but my best work is actually coaching myself. So I coach others, but my best work is for me. And it's really been an interesting experience to look inside my own mind. I know sometimes that can be really hard to do. And at first it was really, really scary to me to be vulnerable with my own self and kind of open that part of me up to exploration. But now I know there are really great things to learn and ways to grow, and so much growth in doing that work that I do for myself. So understanding myself has greatly improved my own creativity, how I feel about my art. That's been amazing. And also it's improved my whole experience just as a photographer and person. And I know I talk just for a minute about coaching myself, but I also get coaching for my own coach on a regular basis because they can see things that I don't. And that's really helpful. And it's like getting my own personal, a personal feedback, right? So speaking of feedback, Len. We're talking about feedback today.
Yes. And what a wonderful subject to talk about. And isn't it amazing that it's affected us, both of us, in throughout our lives as creatives? And before we started recording today, we spent so much time talking about example after example after example of feedback. And it's an issue that's very, very close to both of our hearts. And we really wanted to share with you today some ideas and some thoughts and some stories about feedback. And we're really going to start off is, why would we want feedback, Brie? Why would we want to get feedback? And I think this is even just a valuable question to start with. Like, why do we ask for it or seek it in our lives?
Right. So I guess my first answer would be just to get better, whatever better for you looks like, because that's so subjective, but just improvement in general, right? Like I can think of, so I studied music in college, you studied art, very, very similar, right? And every semester we had to do a jury. Well, I mean, I had my own like teacher, right? And personal like teacher, that I would get constant feedback. And also every semester we had to do this jury that you go and you perform for a small group of like professors that it's kind of actually kind of scary because you're saying, hey, I'm going to put myself and I'm going to perform for you and show you my best work right now. And then you're going to tell me what you think about it, right? Like it's basically asking for feedback when you do a performance like this in front of somebody that's going to judge you. And so then, I got all these scores and they would write things about how like the good things that I did and how I can improve. And so that's what we want. One reason why we want to get feedback is just for general improvement and growth as an artist.
We actually had the same system at art school. We had our teacher for the subject, and at the end of each semester, we would submit an exhibition, a series of works on a wall somewhere, and we would be judged by a panel of 3 professors and marked. And so we had our own teacher and we had 2 other independent people to do that. And the whole term was that feedback from your main teacher. And you would be printing and bringing work in. And actually the best use of your time, it took me a while to figure this out, was actually to use that teacher's time. Because one way to think of it was like, oh, I've got access to the darkroom, but we actually had access to the darkroom 24/7 virtually. The best use of time was actually cornering the teacher to talk to them about your work and to gain feedback. So it was very much about growing personally and growing our work, understanding how the medium worked from someone much more experienced than myself.
Right. And so also that's one of the reasons why we want to get feedback is to see things, to have things reframed for us from a different perspective. And because there are all of these people throughout the whole world, right? Like we're individuals and we only have our point of view. And so when we get feedback from one person or multiple people, which is why a panel is nice because you can see, how their feedback changes depending on their experience and their knowledge and their opinions, right? And so that's really, that to me is really interesting. I like to see things from a different perspective. And if someone, if I ask for critique on my, some feedback on a photograph of mine, then I'm looking sometimes just from a different perspective, and something that I might not have noticed before because I have this like limited view of from my own personal experiences.
It's really fascinating, this whole idea, because we make an artwork, and that could be a performance, a musical performance, could be a piece of writing, it could be a painting. We make it and we have our own relationship with the artwork, don't we? And we want it to say this, and we put our love and all our energy in it, and we own it, and it's so beautiful, and it's so good, and of course I love it because I made it. Also, sometimes we hate it because we made it too, but that's another whole story we can talk about another time. But then we have the audience. And one of the major things, and it's so important, that we can't own or have much to do with the relationship that the audience has with your artwork. It has its own relationship with each person viewing it, and for every person that views it, it's different. It speaks differently to every person. And one of the things that when we seek feedback is we actually want to know, what's it doing to other people? And I think that that's an incredibly valuable part of the process, is understanding how the things that we make work for other people. It helps us grow, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And this is a podcast all about creativity. And I think it helps us grow creatively, because when we can see something or attempt to see something from someone else's perspective, that opens up a whole different realm of the way we could possibly see the world. And now we can add that to kind of our little what is it that how do I want to say that, to our little, all of our little ways that we want to create. So that just goes in the basket of different ways we can view things, right? Like here, I'll this isn't a feedback thing, but this also goes for inspiration too. Also a tiny side tangent, but Len, when I first saw your work, I was like, that is super interesting. All these trees in these sepia tones, in this monochrome, and that kind of opened up a whole different perspective for me, that I can see things in a little bit of a different way. And we can have that too when we get feedback from someone else that also has some different life experiences.
I maintain I've learnt more and grown more from the process of talking about my art with others than through self-reflection and through trying to learn it by myself. Being a teacher, I'm so lucky. I sit down, a couple of times a week with people's work, and we talk about it as a group. And that is where I grow, and my understanding about how an artwork really is expanded. And it's because multiple people looking at the same artwork bring in such various wide variety of interpretations, and how it affects each person individually teaches me how an artwork works. And I really, really value that experience of sharing in that process of feedback. And it's been a wonderful growth thing for me.
That's really beautiful. I mean, I don't want to discount, any of our own personal opinions, because we'll talk about that in a minute, right? We do have to formulate our own personal opinions about our work, because ultimately we're the one that makes all the decisions about what it is and what it looks like, and just all of those creative decisions. But for sure, having the feedback, I think for me, it's super important. So what happens? Why might we not want to get feedback?
Well, it might hurt.
Right.
And it could be a painful experience. And for me personally, there's been tears. There's also been tantrums. There's been throwing away genres. So I threw away painting and drawing through the quality of the feedback that I was getting at art school in my story there at the beginning. There's lots of reasons, if we've had bad experiences with feedback, well, then why would we want to keep burning ourselves over and over to do that? I think that's one reason why we mightn't want feedback, but perhaps another one is we want to close off other people because we really want to concentrate on making artwork for ourselves. And we know that that's a very important part of the process, is learning to make artwork for our own rather than just for an audience. And that's a big part of the learning journey as well, isn't it?
And I find that for myself, at the beginning, I was like, am I sure? What do I actually think about my own art? And I had to really do some like soul searching to just stop, like not listen to anybody and just make decisions, because we can get kind of stuck sometimes in like we can get stuck in the like, what if I'm not good enough, or what if I'm doing something wrong here, and all of those thoughts that we can have about our own work. And so it's making those decisions and then deciding that we're going to be confident in them. And so we might, when we're maybe in that process, maybe we don't want to seek out feedback because we just want to give ourselves the feedback, right? Instead of having someone external do that for us.
Yes, very much so.
Also, in another negative way, well, I don't know. I don't want to really call it negative, but if we might not want to seek out feedback if we're not really ready to make a change. Like if we just hear that feedback might be something that we should do, but we're not really ready to accept feedback and be open to it. If we're not in that space, any kind of feedback that we're going to get, maybe positive feedback, sure, give me all the likes and oh, this is so beautiful, love this, right? So, but if we're not ready to listen in a really constructive way to good feedback, like thoughtful and like thoughtfully given feedback, if we're not ready to listen to that, then we're just not ready. Maybe we shouldn't be getting it right then. So we got to come at it. We do need to come at it from in a way that we are like open and ready. So maybe this is, go ahead.
I'm trying to interrupt you here. Sorry. It's just fascinating that we do happen to listen and get the feedback when we need it. And we have this incredibly powerful mechanism not to hear the stuff when we're not ready. And our own personal journey is very much a part of that. And that's a very esoteric way of looking at it. But when the student is ready, the teacher shows up. And I think that's a really important concept to bring into this, that what's actually really going on underneath is that we shut out the feedback we don't want to hear or turn off from it. And then when we do want to hear the right stuff, we are perceptive to it because it's already on the tip of our thinking probably. And that just pushes us over the edge to understanding what it was that we're thinking about. And I've noticed that throughout my whole life. I had to be ready to actually receive the right feedback at the right moment and then to use it. Otherwise, I didn't hear it. And I went blissfully on missing it all.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I think that kind of brings us to like, what do we do with feedback? Like, because if we're not actively seeking it, right? Like you were saying, like when you're ready, the teacher will be there, which I have actually found to be true too. Like I've put careful thought into who I would like to, on purpose in an intentional way, give me feedback about my work. But what happens when we're not ready to receive that and somebody out there just gives it to us anyway? Like we're not asking for it. We're not, we're not really looking for it. Although some might argue that if we put our work out in a public way, like a gallery on our websites, or anywhere that printed, or on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, wherever. What 500px? What other places are there? Flickr, whatever. Like if we put our work out anywhere publicly, we just had an episode about social media, but some might argue that is asking for feedback because it's public. I don't know about that, because I'm not asking the question of you. I'm just sharing something. But sometimes we do get unsolicited feedback. Now, I posted an image today. I've got some unsolicited feedback. It sounded a little bit like this. I really love the colors here, Brie. I love the layers and the soft light. Like this is beautiful. Like we love that kind of feedback, don't we? I don't know about you, Len. So. Right? Like,
well, I love the positive stuff.
Right.
I love the gushing.
Right. But like along with the positive, sometimes comes some feedback that we might perceive as negative. It actually might really be. So what do we do with that?
Well, it's inevitable when we do put our things into the public realm that we will get particular feedback. And I think, unfortunately, there is a small part of our culture that hides behind beautiful walls on social media and feel the need to give unsolicited feedback. I've actually I've been doing a lecture as a guest in a camera club, and I've had someone stand up in the back of the room and tell me my photo would be better if I chopped a bit of it off and cropped some of it off. And interestingly, Brie, that when that happened, it triggered me because I've been a victim of unsolicited feedback as well as solicited feedback throughout my life in a negative way, and suffered from callous words and unthought of words. And so I took him on, and I suggested that as a guest to the camera club that perhaps that sort of concept should be actually left aside, and that he would be better approached talking to it and approaching it very, very differently. And afterwards, because I gave a whole speech about to him about being more appropriate and maybe polite. And interestingly, afterwards, these two beautiful old ladies, I mean in their 70s, wandered up to me and said, "Thank you, Len. He needed to be put in his place, and we've been waiting for someone to do it." And so everyone in the club knew that this person was doing that sort of behaviours, but no one had actually ever pulled them up before. And it sparked a whole lot of thinking on my part, but that's another whole journey to go down. But I think that's such an important thing to learn how to handle it, and also learn how to give it. And when is it appropriate? How do we actually give this feedback? And how do we receive it? And what do we do with it when it comes in?
Yeah, exactly. Well, can I share a little bit? I'm just going to share a little bit of the story that I told you earlier.
Please do. I think our listeners would love to hear it.
Yeah, so I posted an image on Facebook, and had lots of like, "I love this, Brie," and like always, I have to say, I think the community in general is very supportive. Like overall, the inclination is to just give compliments and be complimentary and to lift each other up, right? And it's all the positive feedback, right? And some people say very specific things that they love, and I love that. But someone came on, and I posted it publicly, so whatever. But someone came on and said how they thought that it would be better if I did such and such to my image, and if I made these adjustments, then it would have, helped. Whatever. It was more of a, do it this way to fulfill my vision for your photo.
So they wanted you to turn your artwork into something else.
Yeah, absolutely. They were trying to put my work into their box. And, that's totally fine, because this person obviously has a very specific vision of what photographs and art should look like. And that's great. Like, be confident in that. However, I knew I didn't ask for that specific feedback. It's very, we've talked a lot about how art is subjective and all of those things. So here's what I did, because I think it's really valuable to understand like how we want to respond when someone gives not positive, unsolicited feedback. So here's what I did. I just told myself that this person has a story about how this should be. That's their story. I decided I wasn't going to make it mean anything about my art. I had already made the confident decisions about what I wanted it to look like. Like, remember, we just talked about being confident in our art, and maybe when we don't want to, look for feedback, I had already made those decisions for myself. In fact, I had already talked with someone about, hey, what do you think specifically about this image? And I had already had those kind of, personal one-on-one conversations, right? So I had already looked for that and made my own decisions. And I just decided because I had already done that, and even if I hadn't, I was kind of late. I just decided I wasn't going to respond right away, and I was going to just think on it and sleep on it overnight. And when I woke up the next day, actually, because I don't think we have to respond to people at all or even right away, like we all get to decide. But the next morning when I woke up, those comments were gone. And I think that person had a realization that maybe they could leave my art alone or for whatever reason, because sometimes we make comments. I mean, we're not like perfect people, right? Like, and I don't know the motivation for this person giving the comments, but sometimes we do them and then we regret it. And thank goodness there's a delete button, right? And so I'm actually really happy that I left it, because it gave that person an opportunity to kind of think about the comment that they made and then just decide to retract it. How many times have we actually said something like in real life? Like maybe that guy that spoke to you, Len, might have actually like retracted his comment. Maybe not. Maybe I'm jumping to that conclusion. But like if he had time to think about it, right, and read the words, maybe they would have retracted it. So anyway, I'm just personally glad that I thought about it, but I had actually come to a conclusion about what I was going to say. So what I was going to say would be something like, it would have been something like, that's an interesting perspective. I hadn't thought about it that way before. I prefer to leave it the way it is. Thank you so much. Right. And so like, that's just how I was going to respond, but we all get to make those decisions for ourselves. Because listen, this is going to happen. I haven't talked to anyone who hasn't received this kind of feedback. Have you, Len?
No. It's on social media. It happens all the time. It happens in it can happen in my classes. Someone just jumps in and. But I work very hard to avoid that. By actually teaching people to give feedback before we actually do go into a feedback session, and it's been my role and job to structure it. But I think it is inevitable, and as we know, the world is full, not over brimming with rude people, but there are enough of them out there, and luckily there's some wonderful members of the creative community that will actually speak up and actually help and monitor some of those things. And it's one of the reasons that I have a closed forum in my photography school that's not public, so that I can control that sort of feedback, and I can pull people aside and say, well, if you're going to do that, this isn't the place for you to be, and remove them respectfully. So it is that. But really the big story here, I think, is about your mindset. And it's fascinating that time fixes so many things, and it's not so much that time itself fixes anything. It just keeps going on and marching on. Our brains, over that chance of having a sleep and putting some space between things, allow us to reassess and reevaluate and see things for what they are, and allow us to remove it from being so personal to us, doesn't it? And so you were able to wake up the next day having removed the personal from the feelings and go, oh, well, actually, it's really just their opinion, and it's not really about my art, me and my relationship with my own artwork. It's their relationship with my artwork, and it's all about them in that sense. And that time fixed that for you, and I think time's beautiful that way.
Right. And, yeah, I agree. But also, like, I assigned my mind before I went to bed. I was like, okay, what I want to explain is when I read the comment, I already was confident in my work, and I had already done the work in my mind. And so their words didn't actually mean anything to me. And so I was choosing whether or not I wanted to respond, but also how I wanted to show up and do it. Because I personally feel like it's important for me how I want to present myself to the world and interact with other people. Like, they get to choose how they interact with me, how they talk to me, but then I get to choose how I respond back. So I was like, okay, brain, this is what we're going to do tonight while we sleep. Decide what you want that response to look like, and if you want to respond. And so when we wake up, that's what we're going to make a decision on today, right? And or not responding at all is a decision, right? And so I think it is important how, well, for me, relationships are really important in my life, and I just think it's nice to always, for me anyway, to be respectful and in so many of my conversations. That doesn't mean I don't get mad sometimes. It's sometimes I'm just mad about it. That's okay too.
I find I can be very respectful, but there's also a moment when if it's the same person doing it over and over, I'm a big fan of delete and block and walking away. And if someone keeps pushing my buttons for their reasons, and they're not justified through my behaviours, just block them and delete them. But anyway, that's one way to survive social media. But actually, I haven't had to do that.
That should have been on our last episode.
I haven't actually done that for a very long time recently, and I actually haven't had a bad experience on social media, and maybe because I pulled back and I did some of the things that we're suggesting as reframing it, about how I wanted to use it and its relationship to me, and changed the way that I used it, and found a way of working with it. But I'm really fascinated about this mindset that you can put yourself in when you're receiving feedback, because this seems to be quite an important part, isn't it? Is if when we do actually solicit and ask for feedback, we want to be in a receptive mind frame, don't we? We want to ask for it for the right reasons. And then when it comes in, we want to be able to use it effectively, don't we?
And so there's two parts of this, right, that we're going to talk about right now. One is how we might the mindset and how we might want to receive feedback. And then we're going to discuss how we can give feedback really effectively, because that is an art in itself. So right? So this part is all about solicited feedback. We've asked someone to give us feedback.
Consent. That's called informed consent, isn't it?
Yeah. There
Brie?
you go. Yes. Yeah, that's right.
It is.
Informed consent. I said yes.
Beautiful.
We asked somebody and they said yes.
Would you like to know what I would do to your photograph or to your artwork? And yes, or when people actually ask, there's actually a few little letters that people put after an artwork to actually request critique welcomed, isn't it? I can't remember the letters that go there.
Oh, I didn't know this. See, I have not been around for long enough to have, to hear
constructive
these things,
feedback welcomed. I can't remember, but anyway.
CFW.
Consent.
I don't know what else that could stand for. All you people in the audience are now making up what CFW could possibly mean.
Well, I have to, anyway.
Okay, let's get back to talking about mindset. So this is what I love to do, because when I ask for feedback, I'm like, okay, I've asked for, sometimes it takes me a little bit. Like I asked for someone very specific to review a small portfolio of mine a while ago, and offer a lot of feedback. And this was a paid critique, and it was really well given, but I hadn't done this with that person before, so I was a little bit nervous. But here's what I did. So I showed up for the feedback. First of all, I had to put myself out there, right? And I think when we're asking for feedback, I think it's really important in our mindset to like figure out why we want it. Like, are we looking for someone else's approval? Like, why do you want the feedback? For me, I want to grow. So I'm looking for personal growth is what I'm, and how you want your art to look like is totally up to you. So when we say better, that's your definition of better. It's not mine. It's not Len's. It's yours, right? Whatever better looks like, and gaining some new perspective for me, right? Like we talked about why we want it. Okay. So ask yourself why you want it and see what's really going on for you. And then when you come into the feedback, and I'm just sharing for me what I do. I'm just going to suggest that you, audience, decide what you want, how you want this to look for yourself. So I like to go into a specific like feedback session, or when I'm asking for feedback in an intentional way, and I'm thinking, like on purpose, I'm thinking this. I'm looking forward to what I can learn today. Right. And so then I'm really coming, like, I'm open to what this person has to say. Right. And that's going to give me some emotions. Like in my coaching practice, we talk a lot about what we're thinking, and how that whatever we think causes us to feel a certain way. And those are all the thinking, all of our emotions come from our thinking. Okay. So that's just some information, but my emotions are curiosity. That's my favorite. I've talked about this before. Like, I want to be curious about what the other person thinks, what the other person's like perspective is, like, what are they going to say that I didn't know before? Right. So that makes me kind of puts me in a like more relaxed, like open state. Also some humility, like maybe I have a lot to learn today. Right. And like, not that I'm thinking my work is bad, but maybe I do really have a lot to learn. Because, well, I'll just leave the humility there. And then the last one for me is like willingness to feel uncomfortable. And the uncomfortable would be like, just for whatever reason, that like something that we're going to think about what someone says that is going to cause us, that we're going to have a thought about it and is going to cause us some discomfort. So it could be like maybe feeling like we're failing, right? Like maybe we messed up, like disappointed that we didn't make the image in a way that could have been better. I mean, I'm saying better in quotes again, right? And so there's a quote that I love that just keeps pushing me forward to feeling this way. It's from Brooke Castillo. She says, discomfort is the currency of your dreams. And so when we can be willing to feel all the discomfort and those terrible feelings, because sometimes we will feel crappy when we're getting some feedback, right? Like, but we're open to it, and we're open to feeling uncomfortable so that we can have that personal growth. That's when we feel the growth, is because we're willing to feel uncomfortable. So discomfort is the currency of your dreams. Like, how great do you want your own personal art to be? And what are you willing to feel to get there? Okay. So any thoughts about that? All that I just...
Oh, I absolutely love that. I love that quote. Discomfort is the currency of your dreams. And yes, you have to put yourself into difficult situations. If it wasn't easy, of course, we have to put effort into things to get somewhere. Difficulty makes things so much more worthwhile and helps us in our feeling of achievement. One of the questions that this raises for me is very much about who we would actually ask for feedback from, and I take this incredibly seriously as a teacher, but let's just flick around to me as a student. If I'm going to put my work in front of people and ask for feedback, I want to know that that they have my interests at heart. I want to know that they're skilled in the process of teaching. And in fact, I enroll in an educational course at least once a year, if not twice a year. I'll go to a workshop or I'll learn something new. And I actually do my research on my teachers. And I work hard and I talk to other students before to see how they feel in that environment and how good that person is at giving feedback. Because honestly, it's a set of skills, isn't it? You're actually asking something that we're never really taught how to do, and not many people are actually interested in the psychology behind giving feedback enough to figure out how to do it in a very effective way. So for me, I'm looking for someone that I respect, someone whose expertise I value, and I listen to them. And so I might even listen to them on a podcast or on an interview and see how they talk about their work and the work of other people's. And if they're inspired about this continual growth, outward growth and interest in the larger world, well, then I'm actually very interested to listen to them and have them talk about my work. But if they're closed and self-interested, I'm not interested at all, actually, to go there. The other point that really comes up with this is when someone gives you feedback, you have the right, the absolute right, to take it and leave it. Because at the end of the day, it's your artwork and you're allowed to make it however you want to make it and express whatever emotions that you would like it to express. So when we're seeking feedback, we're actually asking, well, I'm interested in adding more to my knowledge. At other times, we're putting it out and saying, hey, this is finished. And I'm really proud to put my name behind it and say this is something that I love so much. So if you get feedback that you doesn't sit well with you, just walk away from it. Of course, you have permission not to listen to everyone. In fact, most other people in the world obviously don't know what they're talking about, and that there is no instant fixes to anything when it comes to art, is there? It's all about opinions, subjectivity, and ideas, and expanding the mind. So I think take it or leave it is a really good advice when it comes to receiving feedback, and choose who you actually receive it from.
Right. And we can totally, even if we've researched the person, right, and even if we've worked with that person many times before and we respect what they have to say, we can disagree with them. It is our art, right? We are the ones that get to make the decision. So that's part of the mindset, is also having the confidence to say, great. And honestly, we don't have to disagree with them in like a session. I've done this before where I'm like, I disagree with that. And whatever they said about it, I looked at that and I was like, you know what? I disagree. I love it the way it is. Maybe it could be, quote, better in the other way, but I just love the way it is right now. And that's how I want to present it to the world. And I'm great with that, right? But also, you may want to ask yourself a question before you disagree. You may want to ask yourself, is there truth in what's being offered?
Yeah, is it pushing your buttons?
Right. Yeah, yes. Because I think sometimes when we're feeling that discomfort, we just want to go, no, that's that. So that uncomfortable feeling, we may want to just close it off and say, I disagree, so that I can feel better right now. And so that's when we might want to check ourselves and say, is there some truth to this? What's going on for me, and why? Maybe like if that person can explain, and that's where the curiosity comes in. Like you ask, like you're thinking, I disagree with this. Okay, let me ask some more questions about this and clarify some things so that I can make a better decision for myself, right? So you can totally disagree, just you might want to understand where that's coming from.
I've had that experience many a time, and it's interesting which ones I push away and I totally disagree with, and I have my justifications and reasons, and then the other ones that niggle on me and they hurt, and I have to confront them and actually understand this idea, and it eventually works its way in, and I grow from that experience, even though it might be a painful thing. So choices are very much a part of this. I don't know if you believe in dreams much, Brie, and we haven't talked about this, but I've had quite a few dreams where I've been at conferences or in workshops teaching with people who I would consider my peers in teaching art, where I've actually actively disagreed with them. And I think this dream, and I've had it because it's not so much a reoccurring one, but a reoccurring theme, is about me learning to be more confident with my own ideas and to remind me that it's okay to disagree with people, and such a special thing. And I think you're really nailing it here as an idea that we have to play with. Choose between comfort and discomfort, learning and disagreeing. And only you can answer that, can't you?
Right. And figure out, like, why are you uncomfortable? Is it because maybe you're unwilling to change? Like, what could possibly, be so terrible that you try out what someone's suggesting, and maybe you like it better. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, at least give it a chance, right? So yes. Especially if you're talking about solicited feedback where you've gone and asked the question, hey, what do you think? Or being very specific. And sometimes we do need to be specific about the feedback, right? What about this part? I'm unsure about this. Can you give me some feedback on that, right? And so maybe not just general. Sometimes it's general. Sometimes it's very specific. But decide what we want the feedback on, and then seek for that. So maybe we're happy with one part, and we just need a little help with another part. I don't know. So do you have anything more to say about that, Len? I would love to hear if you're good, I'd love to hear about how to give feedback, because I'm really interested in this.
I'm very happy to move into how to give feedback, and because of these experiences, and I've mentioned a few of them, and the list goes on and on throughout my life, having allowed myself to be shaped by people's feedback, and sometimes in a very, very negative way, I've made it a bit of a mission to learn how to give it to people, and it's absolutely fascinating. And to be honest, the biggest moment actually changed me was going from being a negative critiquer, waving my finger and saying this is what you're doing wrong, to the moment when I actually turned around and told people, where are you going right? And the moment that I actually realised that I could actually teach people faster, and I mean significantly faster, by pointing out where people are going right instead of where people are going wrong. I spent years, I really spent years, Brie, trying to change my teaching practice to actually reflect this newfound information to doing that. It's a bit like driving a race car around a rally track. If
Is it?
yeah. If you concentrate on where you should be going, that's where you'll end up. But if you concentrate on the things that you need to avoid, you often end up crashing into them. And a good example is there's two trees and the road in between. So the experienced, really good rally driver concentrates on where they should be going and ignores the trees. A beginner or someone less experienced who is scared by the trees keeps thinking in their mind, oh no, there's a tree, I'm going to crash into it, and worries about the tree and hits it and slides into it. So they're trying to avoid things as opposed to the expert who's concentrating on where they're going. And that is a really beautiful metaphor. Actually, another one.
Wait, pause. I have a real life story. So I'll tell it real short. So we went to visit friends, and my husband went mountain biking, and he's not an experienced mountain biker. Okay, but he had a GoPro on, and he sent me this video of him falling like head over heels. He wasn't injured. And he said, and it was funny because, of what he said and where the camera ended up. And it was really funny. We had a good laugh. But what he said was, I learned that when you're mountain biking and you're going downhill, because, you're going fast, you don't look right because he's like, I was trying to avoid all the rocks and such, and like right in front of my tires. And he says, you don't look right in front of you. You look at the path ahead, because your brain processes what's right in front at the same time as you're looking ahead, and so you end up avoiding all of that anyway. And that's just really interesting, that if you look way ahead, you're gonna avoid all those pitfalls in between. Anyway, that's just really a real life thing. And if anyone mountain bikes, you understand. And that's applicable to so many things. Okay,
we do that when we're walking.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do that when we walk. We look 10 steps ahead naturally, and then our feet manage to hit exactly the right spot as doing that. Another example of being positive is how we teach animals, and a dolphin trainer is a really good example. We shape a dolphin's behaviour with only one thing. Do you know what that one thing is?
Chocolate.
Well, close. I know that it'd work for you,
Don't
Brie.
give me dolphin chocolate.
It would actually work for me as well.
Me
chocolate
too.
Would work. You could shape
I'm like
me
a little
very
dog
easily.
begging, as long as it has hazelnuts in it or marzipan.
My little Momo, he steals the chocolate and then throws up. It's bad for him, but anyway,
That's
he's not very naughty.
Okay, so how do we train the dolphin?
Well, we use a piece of fish, and when we're studying education, we actually hold that up as an interesting way of teaching people. It's called behaviour modification, and we work with positive reinforcement. We actually show people where they're going right, and we reward them. And with artists, we don't need to use a piece of fish or chocolate. Kind words and actually telling people where they're going right can actually be really, really helpful, shaping behaviours to do that. And it's fascinating how quickly people blossom in the creative fields when they're in a supportive and positive environment, as opposed to being a negative environment and telling people where they're going wrong all the time. And I learnt this from experience, because when that happens to me, I shut down. And like my drawing, I shut down my whole drawing life, and it was my love of my life, because I kept being told I was no good at it, and I'm not doing it right, and it shouldn't look like that, it should look like this. And those shouldn'ts and no and wrong and bad just built up onto me and became too big a burden to carry, so I dumped it.
And I get that, because I feel like this positivity really inspires creativity. And the negativity can like cause us to like squash that. And so that's why when we're giving feedback, right, like we want to give some positivity. We want to give some like this positive reinforcement and show people like what we think they're doing well, right? And that opens it up. Then that I think people are more receptive when I am anyway, right? I'm more receptive when someone looks at one of my images and says, I really love this part, and they're very specific and thoughtful, right? And then I'm like, oh, you think that? Now tell me what you really think. Or like, tell me what else you think too, because now I'm open to it, right?
Yes.
So
there's actually research on that, and it's from Western Sydney University on positive behaviour for learning. And you want a ratio of at least 3 positives to 1 negative when you're doing that in an educational setting as a way of doing it. And students respond better to having an overwhelming majority of positives, and then you just sneak in a negative. And when I say negative, it's about a specific a growth point. One of the words that you used was specific, Brie, and that's actually the key. The more specific your feedback can be, the easier it is for people to stomach. And I have a really beautiful model for this, if you don't mind me sharing it. But if we give a positive general feedback, I feel all warm and fuzzy. And if I give and positive warm general feedback is, Brie, I really love that photo. That's just positive. Negative general feedback is, Len, I really don't like that photo, and it's crap or no good. So that's and that just creates heat. And that positive general feedback, it just makes us feel all warm and fuzzy inside, and it actually doesn't tell us very much, does it? It just makes us feel a little bit warm, and if we get the negative, we feel hot and bothered and grumpy about it. But when I change that feedback to specific feedback, and I actually nail in as accurately as possible what it is I actually like about it, it's like turning on the light and shining a torch in the dark for a person, because suddenly they can see where they're going right. And by telling people where they're going right, that's their path to continue down. It worked then. I'm going to keep doing that, so I'm going to keep doing it some more. So, explaining to someone in an artwork, geez, look, this really works because you're using analogous colours together, and I think that they are really singing and humming and are bringing forth a really beautiful sense of feeling to your artwork. So there's a very specific example of positive feedback, and that gives us light. And then when we have negative specific feedback, and this is where we get into error correction, this is where it hurts, as we've talked about, and what we're after here is to create... Sorry?
That's the discomfort part.
That's the discomfort part. It's like lighting a fire under your bum, isn't it? And it forces you to shift and to move. And negative feedback can be very, very helpful when it's incredibly specific. And the shoulds and don't really work so well, but it's very much about what is actually happening and what is actually causing it in quite a specific manner.
I also think, too, giving some feedback in a very specific way shows that we, as the person giving the feedback, are interested in whatever artwork it is. Like, I'm interested, I've put in the time and the thought to go in and point out and notice and point out very specific things. And so we actually are part of the whole process, because we're putting in our time now into someone else's work, right? Well, I mean, not really, but you know what I'm saying, right? And so we've invested our time, and I think the person getting the feedback can see that. Like when we are very specific, the person sees that and they know it's not just like general, oh, here it's pretty, but why it is. And we've been very thoughtful. And so then they're open to the next thoughtful critique part. And the only reason that we say negative is because it feels sometimes negative. It's that discomfort. And so it feels negative, right? But it doesn't have to be. Like, we don't have to treat it as something negative because we think negative is bad. That's just semantics, right? So I think there is positive and negative when it's the general, but when it comes to the specifics, I think that all kind of gets mixed up a little bit more. So, okay, so what else, Len?
Well, if we're going to think about this idea also that we remember the last thing that's said to us as we leave a conversation, I personally like to leave people on a high note and actually to be finishing on the very specific positive things and working on it. So I actually structure my feedback into a simple thing. It's called a shit sandwich by some people, but I prefer to use the word an onion sandwich, and you surround the bitter pill with sugar. You know, we cover a bitter pill with sweet sugar is another way to do this. And so I start off with a lovely positive and saying, oh, geez, I really love this photograph and or this painting, and it's so beautiful. And, I really love the colour palette. And I think that's incredibly beautiful. And the subject is speaking to me. And then I might move into the error correction moment and actually pick up very, very specifically things that could be changed that maybe would make an improvement. And one way I do that, Brie, is I actually own it. And I often bring it back to myself and say, you know, if this was my artwork, I'd probably change this so that this happened over here. And by darkening this area, you're moving the attention over to this area, and it seems to want to be more of a hero, in my opinion. And by doing that, I'm actually owning it as mine rather than telling you or telling the person how to do things. So instead of it there's never coming out of my mouth is you should do this. Instead, I'm saying, hey, I would consider doing this, and perhaps by doing that, this will change that. And then after I slip in a couple of these improvements, then I focus in for the rest, and I actually save them for the specific good points. And then I talk really extensively about why the rest of the artwork works to me. I was like, oh, I really love the introduction and how you weave me in and show me where we're going to go with this. Or, I really love that leading line that comes in from that corner, and it really takes me up into the artwork and back into the distance there. And, I love the focus on that particular flower there, and there's so many specific things. So I then end on specific positive points. Very much so. So I structure it, and I'm one of those people, Brie, that thinks before they speak, and that's always why I'm going in my talking to you on the podcast, is because my mind has to think out what it's going to say before it says it. And
I noticed I don't finish any of my sentences. So in the earlier ones, I'm not finishing my sentences. I apologize, audience. But it's how we're working through things sometimes.
Oh, I'm loving how we're both growing in this process, and I don't know how about you, but I definitely am learning how to record my speech and my thoughts in this medium, and I'm growing in this process. And I'm growing also obviously from the discussions that we're having because of what we're talking about. It's so exciting, Brie. I love this.
Feedback.
You have to say that again, Brie, because
we do give each other feedback. I mean, about the podcast and about maybe some of the things that we're doing, and I think that's also a beautiful thing that we're able to work together and do that. So
very much so. David Byrne he was formerly from Talking Heads, actually has a blog on creativity. And it's really quite fascinating to read, and I've really enjoyed reading it. And he actually has a whole post on feedback. And I find this really fascinating as an idea, that he finds that while he's doing a performance season, and, there'll be multiple shows in a town, that one negative comment from a reviewer telling him what he should be doing will actually cause such a mess in his mind that it will affect his performance. And so what he actually does is he gets his staff to create a media blackout while he's actually performing, because he's got to a point in his career where he knows what he wants it to be, and he wants to be in that mental state and to keep that clear for that particular performance. So as a way of protecting himself, he actually creates a feedback-free environment during the performance so he can keep them similar and matched through the whole series. I find that absolutely fascinating.
Well, I think what he's doing is he's creating a space where he's not getting unsolicited feedback, right? So all the feedback, he's controlling where he gets his feedback from. And he's also allowing space for him to formulate his own thoughts about performances and whatnot. So, if we need to do that sometimes in our lives, I think that's great. We did talk about unsolicited feedback, and do we really want that, and how do we create a space where we're not having that? So that's okay. I think that's great for him that he's doing that.
Yeah, and a lot of some social media allows you to turn off the comments section so that you can not have any interactions with it at all.
On Instagram, you can turn off likes even.
Oh, I might have to.
I don't know if you can turn off likes. You can
turn off comments.
Yes, but you can also turn off how many likes. It'll just say you got some likes.
I think that's built in now for everyone. It doesn't show you unless you go searching. No, it'll
tell you who liked. I don't know. I like to see who likes my stuff. You liked one of my images today, Len. That's kind of feedback.
Oh yes, that's right. But I don't look often enough to keep up with every piece that everyone posts. So that's only partial feedback occasionally that I give there.
Yeah, it's not real feedback. It's a little thumbs up. Way to go. Good for posting. So
I've got a few rules. Would you like to hear them?
Absolutely. What's funny is these are in our notes, but I'm do we have rules? Aren't we rule free here? Because there's so much in art, but it's there are no rules about art, but sometimes there are. But Len has rules. This is in the spirit. We've talked a lot from our personal experiences and teach from our own experiences and showing you some examples of what you can do. So Len, you've created rules for yourself. And do you have rules for do you teach your students this too, these rules?
Yes. I do, and that's why I call them rules, because I in a class I actually maintain them and make sure that it doesn't get out of hand. And, as a teacher who holds a sacred space for learners, I don't want to destroy the trust of my students by an uncaring remark from a thoughtless student. So, yes, they are rules in my classroom. And I think the best rules are the ones we make up for our own. And I invite people to make their own up and definitely not listen or follow mine, but these are good suggestions and beautiful starting points to work from. And I've only just picked out a small handful because I actually have a huge list that I work from.
Surprising to me. Seriously. All right, let's hear them. Let's hear all these rules.
So number one, if you don't have something positive to say nothing. Like, we really don't care if you think it's crap, and that's all you've got to say. Like, shut up. Really, shut up. And this next one is aimed at certain people as well, because just because you love to hear where you went wrong does not mean that other people want to hear that same feedback. And so a lot of people will use that as an excuse to give unsolicited and negative feedback and damaging feedback just because they love to hear where they're going wrong, and they think that that's the only way that they can learn. And just because you like it, you don't have to do it to someone else. And respect their consent and their invitation to give feedback, and then do it respectfully and in a helping manner. Beautiful. Okay, there's a few more here. There's no right or wrong in art. There's no such thing as better, really. It's all about self-expression. And it's really important to hold that in when we're giving feedback, is that we want to encourage people to express who they are and to create art for themselves, rather than to think of it as a competition. And, if we are shaped by the majority of people, we end up with very, very average actual sort of work. We want people to go beyond what the norms are and find something that's creative and outside, exploratory, something that's beyond actually what it should be. So I also would tell people to be humble and sincere, like to be very, very sincere, and to talk from a personal, heartfelt perspective, and to take on the role of the encourager. Like, encourage people to make more rather than destroying them and pushing them back into the shell. They're putting their work out there to feel good about themselves. And so why not use that as an opportunity to help them by being supportive and to give them some love and to tell them what's right. And my last one, Brie, is to avoid the personal. Like, often you hear in critique sessions, unfortunately, it becomes very, very personal and unintentionally, but that's when it becomes incredibly damaging, with gross generalizations about someone's nature or who they are, and instead of talking about the artwork. And it's so easy to write someone off with an unintentioned set of words by making it personal. So be really, really careful of being personal there. So there's just a few of my little rules, and more like rough guidelines to work around, really, rather than strict rules. But there you go.
I was thinking when you're reading this that, like, you give these rules or this, I know there's more, but for your students in a group setting. But what if we used these rules, and I do the show notes, so I'll copy these and put these in the show notes, because I'm thinking these might be really good to use for ourselves, like when we're giving ourselves our own feedback, right? Because we do this a lot in our work. I mean, we're the ones who make it. We're the ones who see it. We're the ones who make judgments about it. We're not always going out looking for feedback, but we're always giving it to ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. Like with every single thing we do. And so what if we had all of these own rules about giving feedback for ourselves? I kind of feel like we'd be like happier artists if we did this in our own feedback, right? Like instead of beating ourselves up, right? Like if you don't have something positive to say, don't say anything, right? So, because I've made photographs and I'm like, that sucks. But why? Like, why am I not looking at that and going, what was good about this, right? And so using this as like a template for giving ourselves our own feedback, gosh, like how could that change how we look at our work? That could be really life-changing.
Brie, you've nailed it again. That's absolutely so powerful to do. And yes, if we can bring this collective idea about what feedback is to ourselves, to our personal, and approach it that way, we can be better off. And I've tried to work into my workflow a lot of these things, and I give very little effort into work that I create that doesn't excite me. I concentrate on the ones that do, or on the elements in one that does. So I might just find a little bit over here that I really love, and then I concentrate on that, like, oh, how do I bring that into another artwork? So I changed the way that I work as I've reflected on this over a long period of time, so that I can give my work a chance to breathe and to come back to me. And I only have one rating system. It's either good or I haven't really, there isn't a bad. And so I don't have a rating system other than I want to mark this as something that I'm interested in to come back to at another time. So by not making any other value judgment, I then leave it open to be revisited at another time. And integrating these things and thoughts into our own personal, and how to be encouraging to yourself. Wow, that is so powerful, Brie.
Right? Like, how can we become more creative and happier creatives? Like, can we do these things? Like, that's what I want to be. I want to be more satisfied with my work, right? And have more fun creating. And that's kind of why we're here talking about all of this, so that we can get to that place. And all of this goes together, getting feedback, becoming better. I'm more satisfied with my work when I'm growing and changing and doing these kinds of things. And so that's how I want to be. And so actually I'm going to post these rules. And so when I'm doing some self-critique, I'm going to look at these and I'm going to answer some of these, like, be humble and sincere, or be encouraging. Like, how often are we like, oh, that one really sucks, but wait a minute. Let's be encouraging to our own selves. So, to kind of finish us up, I have a quote. I'm listening to a book, and it's taking me a long time. I'm listening to audio, and I listen to it sometimes and put it away and come back to it. But it's called Thanks for the Feedback, and it's just such an interesting book. It's by Douglas Stone, and it's just such an interesting book about getting feedback and what we do with it. And it really kind of unpacks all of this stuff about feedback, but it's kind of a longer quote, so bear with me. He says, "It doesn't matter how much authority or power a feedback giver has." If someone's been doing photography for 30 years versus, right? So it doesn't matter how much authority or power a feedback giver has. The receivers are in control of what they do or don't let in, how they make sense of what they're hearing, and whether they choose to change. So it's up to us. It's about how to recognize and manage our resistance. That's the discomfort, right? Because we're going to feel some resistance. How to engage in feedback conversations with confidence and curiosity. And even when the feedback seems wrong, like maybe we disagree with it, how to find the insight that might help us grow. It's also about how to stand up for who we are and how we see the world and ask for what we need. It's about how to learn from feedback. Yes, even when it is off base, unfair, poorly delivered, and frankly, you're not in the mood. Sometimes we get that. And how do we learn from all of it? The unsolicited, the solicited, from all of it. How are we going to learn and grow no matter what we think about who's giving it, right? And so I just want to just share that quote, like, we can learn from all of it and really have some good personal growth no matter what. So I love that one. I don't know about you.
That's fantastic, isn't it? Because it is really in our power. And that's what the most important thing is. Us as creatives, empowering ourselves to make our art and to follow our creative dreams. And so we need to really be in control of that. Well, Brie, what another inspiring conversation. I feel inspired to revisit all my feedback over the years that are sitting there and question my feelings and my emotions around it and see how I could actually have done that differently this time around. It's so wonderful sharing all these stories and ideas with you and all of our listeners. I do have some questions for you to at home to think about. Is do you actually seek feedback in your art, in your creativity? Who do you seek it from, and where do you get it from? And I think that there's a much bigger question here too, is stopping and reflecting about how you're going to process it and how you have processed it in the past. And if you really want to be incredibly powerful, I think that is a very, very good question to ask yourself and to think about, is how you react and what you do with it. So we invite you to keep the conversation about feedback going with other people, with your friends and other creatives. Perhaps even we challenge you to give some beautiful, encouraging feedback to other creatives and support them in their journey. And of course, we invite you to to continue the conversation with us. We'd love to hear from you. You can email us at create@acreativeaffairpodcast.com. And you can also reach out to us on our social media site as well. And as you know, I run a photography school here in Australia, and I teach creativity. And my absolute passion is teaching people to be creative for themselves. And I do a lot of online courses as well as ones in person. So hopefully one day you'll get to meet me. You can find out more about that at lensschool.com. So
thanks, Len. Yeah, I love those questions too. And then how I want to add a question is also, what can we learn? Like, what are you willing to learn from the feedback that you get? So I just wanted to pop that in there. Also, as a coach for creatives, I talked earlier about my self-coaching, but I also coach other people, of course. I work with my clients to help them achieve their goals and become happier with their art, businesses, and personal lives. So you can go to www.creativemindscoach.com and you can check out my website. I am doing a 3-month, 10-session program that is called Dream It and Do It. So whatever you're dreaming of, come chat with me. You can sign up for a free discovery call, and we will talk about what is standing in your way to doing your dreams. So come chat with me. I'm super excited to talk with you. We'll make a plan for you. And before we go, we just want to say that we appreciate all of you who've reached out and engaged with us and shared our conversations with other creatives. Thank you so much. We invite you to give us feedback. You can go to acreativeaffairpodcast.com or Instagram at, it's at creativeaffair_podcast, and come chat with us. Give us some feedback. Send us a message. We want to hear from you. And if you love the show, please share it. We want others to also grow from our conversations. So, Len, please.
Brie.
This affair has been so fun. I love chatting about feedback with you today. Yeah. I'm glad it stopped raining.
It's very, very beautiful. And again, we're getting better and better at this each time we do one, aren't we, Brie? And today went very well, I think.
I hope so. I hope we're getting better. We're also getting a little longer, so we hope you bear with us. But as we figure out what we want to talk about and say, I think we're honing in on some really amazing discussions about creativity. So also, I want to invite you, the audience, if you have any topics that you would love for us to discuss, please message us. So until the next time, Len, please keep your romance with your trees and your flowers. I know you're working on a flower project right now, and all of the beautiful things you're having your own personal affair with. Please continue to do those lovely things.
Oh, Brie, I will, and I hope that I wish the same back for you as well with your loves and all the romances in your life. And thank you for a great episode. And it's time to say goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone. See you next time.